My name is John Wainaina Karanja. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Melanin, which is building a distributed energy platform on top of blockchain. I'm also co-founder of BitHub Africa and the Black Blockchain Summit, together with Mr. Sinclair Skinner. Can we hear a shout out for Mr. Sinclair Skinner? Yeah, so I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of you for coming today as we continue to educate Black communities around the world on this important technology. Let's begin the session. I would like the three of you to introduce yourselves and what you do in the space as pertaining green energy and environmental justice. Xavier, we'll start with you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Xavier Brown from Washington, D.C. The majority of my work is based around food sovereignty and environmental justice and youth work, primarily in Ward 7 and Ward 8 in D.C., and I'm a part of a Black Farmers Collective.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dynasty Willis, and I'm a Howard alumna. Currently, I serve as a course coordinator here at Howard University for environmental justice and science. So we are working with Title I communities to get underprivileged communities and students an opportunity to have some education in the environmental justice sector. And so I'm here to talk about green energy with you all.
Hi, everybody. How y'all doing? Good. All right. I'm Carrie Fulton, and I run a LLC, a consulting firm called Check the Weather. And what we do is we work with nonprofits, small and large, around environmental justice and sustainability and climate policy. So I'm really excited to talk with you all about that, and also about how the decisions we make today impact our communities also today and also for the next 50 years as we're talking about some of our climate goals as well. And I'm also a professor here at Howard. I'm so excited to be back, and I'm glad to be on a panel with my colleague who works with me on that panel.
All right, welcome all of you. So I think let's begin by demystifying the term environmental justice. What does that exactly mean? Any one of you?
So, sorry to turn it back on. Say that last part one more time.
Demystify the meaning of environmental justice. What does that mean?
Of course. So environmental justice has to deal with how people of color, also people of low income backgrounds, we say people of color and or low income, because we know that through our history of dealing with Jim Crow and redlining, that all of our communities are not equal, even if we do make that type of money that puts us at a different level. We know that we are more vulnerable to environmental toxins being placed and sited in our counties and in our communities. We also know that when it comes to energy justice and what it means for the ratepayers and what it means for the burden that we have to play, and also where these industries are sited and placed, are disproportionately placed in our communities. So when we talk about environmental justice, it's about building community power to change that, and building community power so that we are thinking about our environmental health, our environmental that we actually live in, and how that intersects with so many different things, whether that's criminal justice, whether that is housing justice, or even thinking about climate change.
All right, awesome. Dynasty, I know you're deep in the research. Could you perhaps share what you guys have found in your studies?
Can you hear me now? Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. And so to tie this into blockchain and cryptocurrency specifically, Professor Fulton, as she's already mentioned, we have a disadvantage no matter the financial standing that we're in, just being in a minority space and minority community. And to have all these computerized networks working together in really high energy intensive communities and locations is so important to talk about, because they are really affecting greenhouse gases and some issues like global climate change. Am I echoing a lot? Yeah. Okay, and so these are really important because these carbon emissions in these energy intensive locations are gravely impacting minority communities. And that's where they're choosing to place a lot of offset mining companies and their computerized networks. So we're noticing the air quality, the waste quality, just things like traffic noise and population concentration that are running into these communities and affecting not only education, but financial standing as well.
All right, so what you're saying basically, as pertains crypto, there are issues in terms of how people are mining crypto. And could you just elaborate a bit more on that part?
Yeah, absolutely. So in these energy intensive locations where they are mining, for example, I'm from Pittsburgh. So back where I'm from, in some of the areas where they have high mining concentrations, they are using roughly 0.1 to 0.3% of energy. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, it's under 0.20%, but when you think about it, it's the equivalent to running an entire train line for a whole year and supporting that diesel fuel. So when they're putting these mining companies and locations into some more underprivileged communities, they're really gravely being impacted by that with their sewage, their water, and their waste quality as well.
All right, so I'm a miner myself, as you can see from the hat. So I would like to apologize for the bad miners and advocate for the good miners. So my company, what we do is we leverage the huge solar reliability in Africa, and we're researching a system that we partly developed here at Howard to use excess solar energy to mine cryptocurrency, and then use that cryptocurrency to pay for the sustenance of green energy. And what we've seen is we've set up a site, a small site in Kenya, in a rural part of Kenya with the Maasai community. If you see like what Naja is wearing, that it's called a shuka. It comes from the Maasai community, very creative. And we found that this cryptocurrency mining has been able to sustain a local dispensary. So mothers who are giving birth and they're not having sterilized mats now have the mats sterilized, so they're not getting infections anymore as they give birth. We're finding now communities being able to do small-scale irrigation using the energy that's being provided and subsidized by mining. So I want to turn to Xavier, because he is actually a solution provider in the space, and to describe like some of the work that he's doing and his thoughts on this topic of, what Dynasty was talking about, cryptocurrency being part of the solution and part of the problem.
Yeah, totally. I think that we had a conversation earlier about the solar farms, and I know a lot of the folks that I'm with, we consider ourselves returning generation black farmers, and so we're returning back to the land after our grandparents, great-grandparents may have migrated from. My folks came from North Carolina and Georgia to D.C., and they left everything about sharecropping and farming back in the South. And so we're trying to return back to that. But in returning back to that, there's been a big loss in land. And so just access to land and the level of black land ownership over the last 100 years has, been reduced to like 1% to 2%. And so I think before we even get to the place where we are able to have these solar farms or black-owned solar farms, we need to kind of get to the place where we have access to land and kind of what that looks like and how we can incorporate that into kind of a larger vision of like kind of black sustainability and sovereignty.
All right. So maybe Xavier and Kari, you can talk a bit about education and how the role of education how education can play a role in mitigating and preventing some of the harmful effects of pollution and all this industrial activity that we have today.
It's got to turn green, y'all. Sorry. Okay. Yes. So first and foremost, I think this is key. And I love that you're talking about what's going on in Kenya, because Kenya has a different policy structure than the United States. And it's actually has more sustainability initiatives than the United States does. However, as we're talking about education, one of the big key things, and this is a component of thinking about environmental justice, is also how does the funding that's coming out of IRA, the Infrastructure Reinvestment Act that just came out, a couple of years ago or just recently last year, there's so much in that act and there's so much funding and they're still trying to figure out how to get it down to the people. Now, I'm not gonna sit up here and play like I'm an expert on blockchain because I am not. However, one of the things that I will say is that the experts on blockchain need to get with the experts on renewable energy here in the United States, because these are the opportunities that are happening right now, where you have a growing investment in renewable energy. At this point, I think that Black people, specifically Black people, because that's the problem. So many times we just get lumped into people of color and we're not actually looking at the actual demographics, right? So for Black people, we make up about 7% of the renewable energy sector. Just 7%, right? So that is something that we want to change. And if you have all of these different government initiatives, you're talking about green bank infrastructure, right? So there's all of this money that's coming out of IRA that goes directly into green banks and community lenders, right? So when you set your programs up and what that could actually look like, utilizing blockchain technology, utilizing these opportunities, and also utilizing the data that comes out of that to really understand what are the solutions that are truly reducing our greenhouse gas emissions versus solutions that we would consider false solutions, right? And that's really key and important, because when these investments happen and you have a major investment that goes into something like liquefied natural gas export facilities, right? That's to say that this area, when you talk about liquefied natural gas and that coming from the Gulf South and from our coastal communities and then going overseas, and the increase of energy usage, right? And that's directly connected to our technology that we use. Who is impacted by that? Do you know who's in? Yes. Exactly. The communities in Mossville, Louisiana, the communities in Lake Charles, Louisiana, the communities in Port Arthur, Texas, the communities in Chester, Pennsylvania, where they have to export these different types of energy that are completely toxic, right? So if we're talking about building up an industry and building up technology, we have to think about the end user and the end impact on our communities. So I would definitely encourage people, and that's one of the pieces that we connect in the course that we teach, to look at community asset mapping and to also look at the investments that are coming out of IRA, the investments that are coming out of these different grant initiatives, and what is the overlap? And how does that overlap with things like opportunity zones that are being taken advantage of? Or how does that overlap with the mapping around disadvantaged communities, as they quote it, right? Yeah. Because that, not to take this one last piece, the other big piece as we talk about this is that even within these new standards, they are not allowed to talk about race. So when they're talking about disadvantages, now the big thing is people have to figure out a way to maneuver around the concept of race to showcase that a community is truly disadvantaged. So I challenge all of you all that are blockchain experts to think about how can blockchain help us to identify and catalog and make sure that that funding truly does go to truly disadvantaged communities and to our communities, and what that could look like.
Thank you. Xavier?
Yeah, just to veggie back off what Carrie said, I've been on at least 4 or 5 EPA panels where they're talking about the IRA funding in the billions of dollars that they're putting out for exactly what she just said. It could be green energy, it could be EJ stuff. It's all, it like runs the gamut. It's very, very, very broad. And just like she just said, they're not talking about race, but they have other kind of colorful language that they're using to kind of mix it around. And one of the main things that they're talking about, or at least on the calls that I'm on, is that they don't have enough, they don't say black, but they don't have enough grassroots organizations that are going after the money. And so the money's just sitting there, and they've created these things called Tic Tacs, which are essentially technical assistance, like help centers to help you write it, help you pretty much trying to get you from point A to Z to where you have the money. And the way I've been told is that they're trying to push, or Biden's trying to push this money out before he potentially could get pushed out of office. And so, just echoing what she just said, I think there's a huge opportunity there, definitely for folks in the blockchain space, not only to catalog and track the money, but also how can you kind of change the industry and make it more sustainable? Because 100% the money's there. They've been beating the drum, at least the meetings I've been in, they've been beating the drum and talking about it so much that it's actually become kind of annoying for the meetings that I've been on. But they're talking about it a lot, and I've realized that if you're not, I guess, in the sustainability, I'll never hear anybody talk about the IRA funding, but from what I've been told, it's the most money that the government's put out ever, at one point in time. So I just want to echo her thoughts that it's very real. You all should just Google IRA and yeah. What I can say is at the Black Blockchain Summit, this panel of green energy and environmental justice is the one that gave us the most headache, how to put it together, and we finally did. So how can we turn this into a program? And I'll give the last word to Dynasty to sort of bridge together what they're talking about and the technology side, for example, at Howard.
Of course, and I'm glad that you said that because that's exactly where I was going with that. In communities and in colleges, especially Howard University in particular, programs are so important because a conversation sometimes is not enough. And although we can talk about it and we can push it, we can put it in the air, if we don't educate it and pass it on to those beneath us or those who one day will fill our shoes, for me, example, there's no use in the information. And even if we have the information and we have the knowledge, what we do with it is so much more important. So to encourage these green spaces, for one, just to tell them what our environmental concerns are is so important because a lot of people think that EJ is just about climate change and that we just want to talk about the ozone layer. And there's so much more than that because we talk about traffic noise and waste management. We talk about air quality, water quality, and there's so many more factors and problems that really influence your community. And as we've both said, using these energy intensive locations and just promoting decentralization and making sure that we're proactive with that and we're teaching that through our programs is even more so important so that scalability is not becoming a wide issue in things like blockchain and cryptocurrency.
All right. Thank you very much. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you very much.